I remember the riots in 1968 and the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As a student at Covington Holmes High during 1970, I recall a protest led by young student activist Robin Williams. Frustrations about the lack of black teachers, studies, and acknowledgement of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday were all concerns. Changes many times must be forced through economic sanctions. Their strategy was to cause a disruption to the average daily attendance funds for the school allocation. Every day missed caused financial consequences for the school district. Covington schools now embrace and celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.
No justice, no peace. Take a stand, together we are one. No justice, no peace.
My name is Robbie Williams. I'm born and raised in Covington, Kentucky, 68 years. In July, it would be 69. Thank God. I attended Lincoln Grant, was not given the privilege or the honor to attend William Grant because by that time, segregation had come about and we had to go to different schools. This is when you had a village, you know, and all parents was your mother. All fathers was your fathers. And half of them was not Miss So-and-so. They was Aunt So-and-so, Uncle So-and-so. And none of us had blood line, but we had a community line. And that sometimes meant more than your relatives. I didn't want to go to homes because we weren't wanted. And I was taught to never go nowhere where you're not wanted. Ended Holmes High School in 1970. Once I got in the 10th grade, I had nowhere else to go. Holmes was the only public high school in Covington. I finally got there in 1970, okay? And that was the time between 69 and 70 where we were having, after King, you know, got killed, we were having more sit-ins, walkouts, riots, and whatever we had to do to be known to the public. We are human beings. We are people. We're just as really equal as you, whether you want to believe that or not. If you get into the Bible, like I asked you to put in first and foremost, if you do that, you would have no problem with understanding that we are all equal. Back to 70. What came about is the treatment of Black people. I got to say Black people because at that point in time, you didn't have a lot of people of color. You didn't have the Asians. You didn't have the Hispanics. You didn't have what you have here now, Africans and all that. I think we might have had one African, but other than that, it was just Black people. So the treatment that we received was not welcoming. We already knew we weren't welcome. When we came up, we had community centers. Hallelujah. Thank God. Back between the 69 and 70s, but before 69, you were getting your parties in like Black Panther parties, all kind of NAACP, but they've already been in existence, but they were coming strong then because we needed them. So they got us together, these older guys, we knew them, they're like big brothers, and had a mass meeting and told us everything that we needed to do, you know, get your ducks in a row. We really didn't set out to have a riot. And they called it a riot because, yeah, we were getting a little rowdy. But here's what a lot of people don't know about that. We did not fight no students. See, that's what you don't know. We weren't fighting the students because the students, the Blacks and white, and my class was the bombers, I'm sorry, of them all, 1972. We was bonded like this. And in other words, you have to stick together. If you know you're fighting for a cause, but you see them marching all the time. I'm so sick of watching some of them because their history keep repeating itself and there's nothing being done about them. And that's the killing of Black people. You know, this is definitely gonna have to stop too. You know, and you know, it's just something that the world is turning a left eye or right eye or whatever kind of eye you want to turn to it. But what I feel that they don't realize is you still got to pay that cost. And this is what you don't realize that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to meet your maker. Forgiveness or whatever, or even stop doing what you're doing, number one, because what you're doing, you know you're doing it wrong. You just have a license to kill, and you're taking advantage of it. It is what it is.
Let's take a look back at the past. Let's set the stage. As we look at the past, we must acknowledge the Licking River was a major water transportation channel during the Civil War. Now, across the Licking River into Newport, Kentucky, lives Virinda Garland Doddy. She's a local poet laureate, a retired teacher, and a civil rights advocate. Her image was recently captured on the Newport Levee floodgates at the Memorial Drive intersection and I-471 exit.
Society says I'm dead. I'm young, black, I may be white. But regardless of my color or race, man, I'm dying. I look around and what do I see? All of God's people living in poverty. I want a home, a car, man, and a wife with kids to play in the park. The society says I'm dead. So I walk with my head hung down, looking like anybody's clown. But man, I want a home, a car, a wife with kids to play in the park. Won't you? You? Hey, what about you? Reach out your hand to help your fellow man. Don't let society say I'm dead when I haven't yet got ahead. I'm blessed to be 74 years old. Very thankful to share my story because I'm in the process of writing a book. My mother came to this area when I was 3 years old. I'm originally from Cope, Illinois. My mom and stepfather, Herbert Britton, along with my two brothers, Thomas or Daniel Carter, he is deceased, and my brother Eugene, they call him Great Britain Carter. We came to this area when I was 3 years old, so that was back in 1951. My mother owned her own home before coming to Kentucky. When we came to Kentucky, we became homeless because my stepfather told my mother, I'm going to bring you to my home. And in her mindset, that meant you had your own house and you owned your own property like she did in Illinois. And by coming here, since he did not have his own house, we became homeless. I do not at this date call any place home because I have lived in around 26 different places, meaning houses, because they're not homes to me. My home is with the Heavenly Father. And plus I had a spiritual mother. My mother was a praying woman. Southgate Elementary School, I was in the last class, had teachers Miss Vine and Miss Patton, but I went to school at age of 3 with my brothers. I was reading at age of 3 before I came to Kentucky because of my brother Tommy Britton. Whatever Tommy learned in school, Tommy taught me on my age level until I got into the first grade with Miss Patton. When they integrated, closed down Southgate School, and we went to 4th Street Elementary, it was a problem for the Caucasian teachers having a young black student being able to read. My mouth was often taped. I was often told there was no need for me to get an education because all I was going to do was do domestic work or work in a restaurant. The students at 4th Street Elementary, it was not very pleasant for them. I witnessed the teachers striking a lot of the students. I've also witnessed the teachers calling us the N-word and the students calling us the N-word. It's sad that a lot of bright, capable adults who are now deceased only went to the 6th grade. After the 6th grade, they left because of being beaten down.
I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about your involvement with the NAACP.
But in fact, I was a member of NAACP through Mr. Knox. I was a member of the Covington NAACP. And when that died out, there was not an NAACP. Then Mr. Bowles came to Northern Kentucky and revived the NAACP. What got me involved was I'm on my way over here to Covington for a meeting with the housing because I had gotten involved with the East Side Neighborhood Development Program. Miss Pauline got me on the board of directors there. I was on my way to a meeting, and I saw my daughter Donna, her two daughters, Tishelle and Tori Watkins, my granddaughter Mariah Garland, and my grandson Dalen Garland Jr., who was 4 years old, knocking on doors, giving out hand flyers. That touched me. And I said, if my 4-year-old baby can encourage people to get involved, I need to get back involved with NAACP. That's what got me involved.
I want to share with you a little information about Ellesmere. Serena Baker-Owen made history when she won election as the first Black elected to the Erlanger Ellesmere School Board.
So the women in my life have been a tremendous blessing and just a blessing, and just really guided me and my steps as God, does. And we're a very faith-based family. So I am the daughter of Renee Baker-Wilson, who is the daughter of Juanita Daniels Baker, who is the daughter of Jenny Parks, Jenny Daniels Parks. And she is the daughter of a slave who was owned by Colonel Parks here in Kentucky. And we also had, and so on the plantation, there were also other members of our family, which we have family members who are also a Native American. We have Cherokee in our family, and we are on the land of Cherokee. And so we actually have a family member named Pocahontas.
Oh.
And so I'm not sure which war Colonel Parks, who owned our relatives, fought in, but we believe that it was during the era of slavery, and it was around that issue.
Oh, around the Civil War time.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting. Now, what part of Kentucky is your family from?
So I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm here in Northern Kentucky by way of college, Northern Kentucky University. And so when I graduated from high school and came to Northern Kentucky University at the age of 18, that's kind of where I began growing up in Northern Kentucky. That's how I see it, because I was still young. And then I made roots here with my family, my children, and my husband. This is where I got married, and this is where we are. But the rest of our family, we have a lot of family, and we joke a lot and take great pride that a lot of our family's from Paris, Kentucky. So I grew up saying, hey, my family's from Paris. We're from Paris. And folks are like, oh, wow, Paris. Paris, Kentucky. do believe that our lives do matter. Black lives matter, as well as other lives matter. So from a faith-based perspective, we're all a part of the same family. We're all children of God. And so I believe that's why it doesn't bother me to hear, folks say, well, all lives matter. Well, yes, all lives do matter. But as far as the movement, Black Lives Matter as well, and that's where that phrase comes from, is because of horrific incidents, well, not even incidents, but, murders and the lives taken from Black people because of hatred and racism. And the movement was started and created to, as a way, a cry out, that we matter, we're here, we're a part of this beautiful family that God created, and that includes all of us. And all of our lives do matter, including Black people who have been devalued and not often, heard or accepted and included. And so I personally, still feel sorrow and grief, for the lives lost, like, my brother George Floyd and sister Breonna Taylor. Their lives didn't have to be taken, and that was wrong. So as far as the movement, I do believe that our lives, that Black lives matter. We do, just as other lives matter. Mm-hmm. And I believe all of our lives do matter. And I'm the daughter of a police officer, a retired police officer. And so I appreciate their service, the service of, and I know that there are good police officers like my father who got into the field so that he could help be a role model and help serve in our communities and help guide, young Black children, mm-hmm. Where there was this absence or void of, I guess, security and professional or leadership, mm-hmm. and maybe even a void of fathers in their lives. And so my father, stepped up after the military, because he's also a Marine veteran, just like my husband, who's a Marine veteran and a retired teacher. But when my father entered the field of law enforcement, that was his goal, to help protect the lives and not take lives, which, a lot of Black lives have been taken at the hands of police. So I do know that there are really good, officers like my father who value us, who care about us, and, take pride and time, mm-hmm. To give back to our community.
Good.
So I don't believe in defunding the police, which is one of the, I think, the goals of the Black Lives Matter organization. Uh-huh. And so that's why, I'm not a part of the organization, but I do believe in the philosophy of our lives matter, just as all lives matter too. Right. Black lives do matter.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to explain that and share your perspective on it. And coming from the fact that your dad was a police officer who's retired, but also the fact that he served in the military too. So depending on what you've seen helps form your perspectives, and that's what this interview is all about today. You're also a member of the Northern Kentucky NAACP?
Yes, 2 branches, the Northern Kentucky branch, and then across the river in Cincinnati. My roots are in education. My grandmother retired from education, and she began and I really looked up to her and my mother. They're a voice, served as a voice for others, and loving leaders, within our churches and community. And so she was in NAACP. My mother's in NAACP. I was also a part of the National Association of Negro Women.
Oh, okay.
And so they've really helped order my steps and kind of guide me in the way of like promoting helping others.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things, as far as being a faith-based woman is loving my neighbor. And one of the ways we can do that, and so you all see the hat, love. I've always been taught, whatever I do it in the spirit of love. And so a lot of folks who see me, they see me with my love hat on.
Yes.
And it's just one of my signatures.
Christina Brown, and I am better known as Chris Brown. That's pretty much what everybody calls me around here. I live in Ellesmere, Kentucky, born and raised here. Did spend 19 years in Florence where I raised my children. And then I moved back home partially due to a lack of diversity in Boone County. So I came back home only to find the world going crazy. And I'm very dissatisfied. I'm just very dissatisfied with the state of the United States as it relates to equality and the lack thereof and injustice as it pertains to black people. I was born and raised here, so literally around the corner from this very park is our family house, and around the corner from that is the house that I live in now. So it's definitely home for me. My children weren't born here, they were born in Florence, but I was. I think home is where you're accepted, it's where you're comfortable, it's where you know that your neighbors know your name and know who you are. It's where you can feel safe. Well, if I'm being totally honest, here in Erlanger, Ellesmere area, we don't have a lot of the racial, the blatant racism that you're seeing right now in Louisville and in other parts of the country. However, it's underlined, and I like to call it shadowed. Just in the planning of this particular march and the one before it, people kind of came out of the woodworks in my home community. And it's people who I feel have known me and know that I'm a hometown girl, but still, they didn't see Chris Brown. They saw the black lady that's bringing the Black Lives Matter march to the community. So that automatically made me public enemy number one. So it was shocking, to say the least. I don't think I ever second guessed calling this home until probably the first time June the 7th, or the preparation leading up to June the 7th, and definitely after this week, home needs some work. June the 7th, I think, was about 2 weeks out of the very first outcry of Breonna Taylor, which we know she died in March, but it didn't become a really public thing until towards the middle to the end of May. George Floyd had just died the week before, and I remember watching. I was getting ready to set up and start working. I work from home. I was getting ready to set up and start working, and I happened to get a news flash on my Facebook. And when I clicked it, it was the video of George Floyd. And I wanted to turn it off, and I couldn't. It was something I'm telling you, this drew my soul. And to watch this man be treated the way that he was, to watch another human being put his knee on this man's neck, and to hear this man call for his mother, and I'm a mother. Something tugged on the very core of who I was as a person. And it's the whole day. It sent me into rage. I called my kids to come in. I wanted them to see it. And then I was battling with myself on whether it was something they should see. And then it's like, absolutely, you should see it. This is crazy. And I remember being very emotional and crying and literally yelling at the telephone. Get off of him. What are you doing? What is happening? And then I was noticing the other officers that were around him. And it's like, you're just standing there. And I just remember within myself thinking, where in the hell is the humanity? So from that, I couldn't sleep. I literally could not sleep. And I want to say that was on maybe a Thursday. Well, it troubled me so bad that by the time Sunday hit, I woke up Sunday morning and I'm like, we got to do something. And so I called a couple of people, friends of mine. I'm like, did you see this? You know, they had seen it. Everybody was equally shocked. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we doing about this? And so about that time, people started gathering, not necessarily marching, but gathering. And so as it developed all over the country, it kind of developed within that week for me as well. So June the 7th would have been that Sunday, the following Sunday. So I had decided, I didn't really know how long it was going to take to organize a march or even who would care enough to come. But I thought, well, let me give myself this week kind of to plan. And so I did. And so I started planning, and June the 7th would have been the first march historically in this area of its kind. And the people came from everywhere. Northern Kentucky, some far, some from Louisville, some from Cincinnati. People came from everywhere. And what I found was that there were at least 1,200 people who were equally as outraged as I was. And so we marched. That route I chose Dixie Highway. Dixie Highway runs, I don't know, it runs through half the country, quite frankly. The name of it itself is racially motivated. Not that I put too much emphasis on the name and the racist background that the naming of that street has, but it did kind of seem fitting to march on Dixie Highway for racial equality, justice for George Floyd at that moment, definitely justice for Breonna. And if I'm being honest, at that point, the Breonna Taylor situation was really just being introduced to me. And with her being in Kentucky, that took a life of its own. It's like, oh, good Lord, that's down the street for me, basically. We absolutely need to figure this out for her, because I have two teenage daughters, one in college, one's a senior in high school. She wasn't much older than them, you know. So that's where June the 7th originated from, out of sheer outrage and horror. I was horrified by what was going on.